That's how you get ants.
In 1995, Nickelodeon decided to branch out into movies with the adaptation of Harriet the Spy. They continued producing both live-action and animated films based on their existing properties like Good Burger and Hey Arnold! The movie. I know what you're thinking, but I'm not ready to dig into the can of worms that is The Last Airbender. No, today we dive into an oft unremembered film whose biggest star was French Stewart. Yes, my aunties, today we are talking about 2002's Clockstoppers.
Clockstoppers.
Clockstoppers has everything you could want from a 2002 movie. Soundtrack heavily populated with songs by Blink-182, the new Beetle that had been released by Volkswagen in 1998, and a premonition that the NSA is evil and not to be trusted. Oh, and it was directed by everyone's favorite Starfleet number 2, Jonathan Frakes. Don't at me.
Do you love to go a-wandering beneath a clear blue sky?
I always like watching this movie, and it was such a flop that it shows up a lot on the free with-ad streaming services, Crackle, as it attempts to squeeze a few dimes out of the digital age. The idea was simple. What if you had a watch that could stop time? Well, what if you were a teenager with a watch that could stop time? Was no one asking that question? The movie follows Zach, a 16-year-old who trolls antique stores for old technology to clean up and sell on eBay. God, this movie was ahead of its time. Anyway, he's saving up for a car. He meets with his physics professor dad in order to confirm everything for the sale, only to be shut down with silly things like safety ratings and comparative studies. Zach makes the observation that his dad cares more about his students than he cares about his kids. Before they have time to make amends, Professor Dad leaves for a physics conference. Meanwhile, former student Doppler, French Stewart, has sent a prototype of a watch that stops time to Professor Dad, a watch that gets mixed in with Zach's eBay junk. Finding it, Zach thinks it's cool and starts wearing it. After several failed attempts to get the new girl to go out on a date with him, she finally invites Zach over where he discovers that she wanted him to help her with chores. She goes inside to make some drinks. Zach sets a timer to finish up outside and goes in to meet with her. This has inadvertently triggered the watch's time-stopping function. Well, so here's the thing. It doesn't really stop time. It just speeds up your molecules, so it seems like everything else has stopped. Zach comes across a possum thinking it's weird that the thing isn't moving. He brings it inside. Francesca is standing, frozen, at the fridge. At that moment, the watch deactivates, the possum goes nuts. She starts yelling at Zach as he shoos out the now animate possum. Francesca gets mad that Zach didn't keep cleaning the yard, instead bringing the live possum into her house. Zach gets upset because he did, in fact, clean the whole yard, unaware that he was on super speed, or hyper time, as the kids are calling it these days. Francesca is about to spray him with the hose on the sink when he activates the watch again, suspending the water mid-spray. Of course, now that he knows how it works, it's time for some montage hijinks. He and Francesca go on a super speed date, committing the sort of low-key antics one expects from a Nickelodeon movie. If you grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, you'll remember it was the time when DJs roamed the earth. If you didn't spin records, then your best friend did. Zach's best friend is competing against the school bully in a spin battle, I guess. I don't know what they're called. This is all sort of an argument for the innocence of the time period. This kid would never be cast as a bully in this day and age. He's short. He's not a jock. This movie was all about equal opportunity bullying. Zach and Francesca use hypertime to help the best friend win the battle. Zach gets a goodnight kiss, goes home on hypertime to see lights moving in his house, meaning someone in there is on hypertime too. It's the bad guys from QT, the NSA contractor trying to recover the watch sent to Professor Dad. Zach finds a van nearby with Doppler tied up inside. There's a car chase where the cars are going in and out of hypertime, leading to some fun and interesting effects. Doppler escapes as Zach crashes the van, yelling a warning to not get the watch wet, which Zach immediately does. Zach wakes up in the hospital after the crash, the police there to arrest him over the stolen van. Zach frantically tries to dry off the watch as the QT guys close in on the hospital. He escapes in a pretty clever way. Meanwhile, QT kidnaps Professor Dad from the conference to replace the escaped Doppler. Francesca, Doppler, and Zach are all labeled fugitives. Doppler returns to get the watch back, seeing it as his only way of escaping, only to be knocked out by Francesca. They head to the conference to obtain the items to repair the watch, then head to a paintball store to create liquid nitrogen guns in order to lay siege to the QT lab to rescue Professor Dad. The liquid nitrogen slows down the molecules to bring you out of hypertime. Again, clever. The assault doesn't go very well. Doppler abandons Francesca and Zach before they even get inside. Both of them get captured quickly and put into the room with Professor Dad. We find that Zach has switched out his watch with a regular one they used for spare parts at the conference. He activates hypertime inside hypertime, moving so quickly he has made himself unstable. He passes through the walls of the clean room to distract the henchmen while Professor Dad rigs up a nitrogen bomb to destroy the building's hypertime generator. Doppler shows up at the last minute to take out the head of QT with nitrogen balls. Balls. The NSA collects the watches to keep them out of the hands of... well, I guess that's a different movie. Zach gets in his car and the last shot is him activating hypertime as he drives off with Francesca. Despite coming out in 2002, Clockstoppers has the feel of a classic 90s movie, a sort of carefree action movie that explored its subject matter with the loving sense of humor that it deserves. It seems like movies that came out after were all grim and dark, pretending as though taking yourself too seriously is endearing rather than exhausting. I'll be honest, without Clockstoppers, you wouldn't have Evan Peters' Quicksilver. So you have to at least give it props for that. Maybe part of my enjoyment of this movie was that the characters were the same age I was at the time. Maybe I just liked that the clever twists weren't too clever for a 16-year-old to come up with. It's a 94-minute movie that flies by with action and humor in a good balance. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't have anything redeeming for this one. A critic score of 29% with an audience score of 30%. It seems like no one came back to ratio this one. Then again, maybe the only reason I like this is for its nostalgia points. That's it for this episode of Anything Nice to Say. Keep spinning those records and never be ashamed to like what you like. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Head over to Patreon to subscribe for exclusive content, early releases, and to get your name in the credits. My book, Live Like Legends, is available now wherever books are sold. If you have a movie about which you would like me to find anything nice to say, drop it in the comments.